Доброго ранку, шановні колеги.
Good morning, esteemed colleagues. The Reanimation Package of Reform, RPR, initiates today the meeting for the sake of our future, for the future of our children, and for whom we have to create the environment which would be favorable to them, to their health and life, which is impossible if you're talking about the environmental protection system, which is now absolutely ruined. We have to reform the system radically, and also this reform has to have a number of Euro integration laws. One of such laws we are going to present to you. This is draft law about the assessment of environmental impact assessment. In the course of work on this law, or draft law, we closely cooperated with the Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources. My pleasure to give the floor to Hanna Vronska, Deputy Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources of Ukraine. Good morning. I would like to note here that almost 1 year elapsed in this time when Ukraine signed the association agreement with the EU, which opens the new vista for Ukraine, not only among other things, in the way of cooperation with European countries in economic cooperation and environmental protection. In implementation of this agreement, we provided some steps, and I would like to know that in the sphere of environmental protection, Ukraine undertook several commitments. We have to implement almost 29 directives and regulations of EU, and those the 29 EU acts are divided into conventional to 8 directions, and one of those is implementation of the ecology policy in other sectoral policy and the management of environment. And the law of environmental protection assessment, impact assessment, is very important draft law, since it provides the grounds and foundations for other regulatory and legislative initiatives in the environmental protection sphere. And despite the fact that the draft law which we are discussing today has been submitted to Hanna Ruda by a group of MPs, the Minister of Environment and Ecology supports this initiative, and we hope that the MPs also will support this draft law and will vote for this in the first reading. Thank you. Thank you. Astaf Vladimirovich, MP, one of the co-authors of the draft law on the environmental impact assessment. Good morning to everybody. Organizers of this function very aptly, I believe, named this topic, how to prevent Chernobyl in Ukrainian cities. The matter is that 1 week ago in the Ukrainian center, Chernobyl center, we had the public hearings regarding the construction of the NPP facilities in Hungary. And Ukraine actually organized some public hearings on that matter with the representatives of Hungarian colleagues. They discussed this issue. This pertains to the commitments undertaken by Hungary and Ukraine in the international context of their commitments. Did we have any public hearings regarding the construction of NPP additional power units in Rivne-Khmelnytsky? I can't remember that most likely they have not been held. This draft law actually provides the very clear outline about some kind of criminal decisions to be taken. It clearly indicates what has to be organized or arranged for the public to understand what hazard can actually bear, what threat can bear this or another facility, which is going to be built not far from their residence. International commitments of Ukraine. Apart from that, we have about our commitments regarding joining of the European and Empowered Energy Charter. And Ukraine became several years ago part of those agreements, or some of the agreements. And since we are very much dependent on the European market, including the natural gas market, the commitments of Ukraine to adopt the ecological laws regarding the European law. Also, they have something to do with the European energy community. And yet, in 2013, Ukraine had to adopt the law on the environmental impact assessment. So until now, the law hasn't been adopted. We have addressed the European Energy Community. They actually had a good, well, they appreciated or praised highly this law, but again, they said that Ukraine does not fulfill their commitments in international scene. So I remember, I hope that that law, you know, after November, December hearings, which are going to be held in November and December this year, we hope that all the MPs will adopt this in first hearing and then adopt it as a whole. And Ukraine, in this way, will actually fulfill its international commitments. Thank you. The floor is given to Hanna Hopko, also co-author of this draft law. Good morning, dear colleagues. It's very pleasant. It's very nice to see here today that in Parliament they have some kind of coalition between the Committee on the Foreign Affairs, on the ecological policy, etc. And there is a very good cooperation, further strengthened by the Environmental Protection Public Organization. That's why our proposal will be submitted to the Reconciliating Committee. And since we are talking about the Euro integration laws or draft laws, so that the month of November became months of the ecological environmental protection, the activities of the Parliament. We prepared the necessary database, or let's say materials for the first hearing, which was mentioned by my previous speakers. It's very important to us to be able to coordinate our efforts, and before the International Climate Conference, which is going to be held in Paris, and the participants, let's say more than 40 presidents of different countries in the world, including President of the United States, Barack Obama, already agreed to do that. And we have to go to that conference with a package of the law initiative or legislative initiative, so that we could be instrumental in contributing to the protection of the environment. And globally speaking, Ukraine has to demonstrate that we are for the harmony in our relationship with nature. So we do hope that in addition to transparency and participation of the public, those draft laws will help us to improve the environment situation, and those experts who are interested in contributing, or let's say investing their money, they actually can contribute to the transparency through those procedures, unlike what we had before when there was some kind of abuse of that. Now the floor is given to well, good morning, dear colleagues. I would like to thank the organizers of this function today, because the discussion or the sharing of this information with the broad public, what's going on today within the premises of Verkhovna Rada, and the prospects which are for this draft law is very important. We all speak a lot about the reforms. In particular, there is a lot of talk in the Parliament and beyond its boundaries regarding the reform in the healthcare systems. Why I'm talking about that? Because one of the preventive measures in healthcare system are ecological issues. This draft law, which we are discussing today with you, in its essence, is one of the small or little steps which will provide the possibility for the Ukrainian community to save money on the expenditures on the treatment of the patients, and actually to overcome the negative consequences and effect of the contaminated and polluted environment, and will give the chance to Ukrainian community, our children, to live happily and healthy, be healthy. Also, I would like to say that this draft law, this is the issue not of today. This is still issue which had to be taken care of the day before yesterday, so to say. But unfortunately, the personnel policy of the government, which is kind of very lame, to say the least. Until today, we do not have the Minister of Ecology. I believe that this is one of the most serious negative aspects in the Ukrainian general ecological situation, and believe that in the nearest future, the Parliament anyway will is going to appoint the Minister of Ecology. What else I would like to say? This draft law has a lot of positive things. And being one of the co-authors of this draft law, I would like to say that specifically meeting the requirements of ESPO conference and other conferences, this is has a lot to do with the fulfilling our commitments which we undertook let's say in relation to our international partners. We have the Ukrainian mentality, and from the practical point of view, the experts and practicing specialists will not allow me to mislead you, because we have a lot of serious issues to be resolved. And if we're talking about the serious discussion of construction of this or another industrial project, which actually is useful, even if it's useful for the Ukrainian economy, we cannot stop the economy or the slow down its development. Anyway, today there are a lot of businessmen who actually know how to make money on the public hearings. I believe that up till the second reading, if we will be able to introduce some additional things, really necessary things, we'll come up with a super document which will contribute to the improvement of our environment. The floor is given to Olena Kravchenko, Executive Director of RPR Group. Like our organization, the whole public at large for decades has been waiting for the adoption of this draft law and the effective mechanism in passing the decision or decision-taking regarding the environment. It has been already mentioned that the public opinion has been manipulated with, and the public cannot actually affect on what is going to be built next to your own residential place and what kind of steps should be taken to improve the situation, what can be changed. This draft law is positive from the point of view. For example, how many days is given for its discussion, and then we also put it on the website and created a register of all the documents which will reflect all the comments and remarks of the public at large, or business or other shareholders, and this will make impossible different manipulation and corruption procedures. We as the public, we are looking forward to that. Also would like to add at this point of time that this is not or it will not only for the public at large, but also for the investment climate. This is the transparency which is much awaited by international business and communities. And when this law is going to be implemented, those public hearings won't be any longer scaring to our investors. They actually will show how in our country they're going to take care of the construction of different new projects or the completion of the old projects, or let's say implementation of many other construction projects. Thank you, Marta. Marta actually was very apt in mentioning that this draft law, first of all, doesn't have something to do with the public or some participation, but this draft law introduces a very clear procedure for environmental assessment, where we are going to take care to minimize the possibility of corruptive schemes, and we are going to create the favorable climate for the investments, both foreign and national. Now I would like to give the floor to our colleagues who are also very active in preparing this draft law. I would like to note several things. It's worthwhile to mention that in addition to the assessment, the procedure, different impact on the environmental assessment, this draft project of environmental impact assessment also gives the possibility to discuss it in the MP. You are talking transparency. Article 3 of this law actually has a list of different facilities and structures which actually produce impact on the environment, which allows to the authorities to understand which kind of projects and facilities are subject to such kind of attention, and this is going to be fixed in the law. Also, it should be we should draw attention to the following: whatever high in spite of the fact that there is high whatever quality they're going to be created without the special procedure of the environmental assessment, it's not possible to implement that again in a good manner. This is also very topical and timely, I mean, this draft law. And if we're talking about the international commitments taken by Ukraine, also the association agreement, for this sake, the law will be adopted in the near future. Thank you very much. Actually, this exhausts the list of those speakers who would like to share their main opinion on this draft law. Should there be any questions from the audience, please, you're welcome to do that.
Can you tell me in more detail about the draft law, how the civil society can intervene, and what about the investment, how can they be used? First, if we are speaking about the existence of the influence, allows us to create good situation for investment. It shows that the creation of these possibilities that are envisaged by international organizations, these organizations that provide expert assessments, social components can exist also, but environment protection and healthcare is one of the most important components of such an estimate. And without it, it's impossible to realize these investment projects. And there is also an important component, and this assessment has to create a possibility to involve society, the participation of people in the process. First, they estimate the scope of research when they prepare the report. Before this, the society should provide its view to what this report should be directed at, because local residents, people can know their regions better than investors or project designers. And when in the documentation package there is such a report, society can provide discussions and propose some ideas, and they have the opportunity to create a public discussion in the framework of such a procedure. And then it is envisaged that these proposals should be taken into account. And it means that it should be shown that these proposals are incorporated in this project, or if they're rejected, so they should show this in the table, why, on what grounds they are rejected. They shouldn't be ignored without any grounds. And I would like to continue, but more simpler, in order to understand better. So we should prevent abuse and corruption. If you know the current legislation about the assessment, and without this assessment, we can't start any work, any project. So there is, as part of the assessment, and they conduct an environment expertise. In order to get a positive result in the bodies in Ukraine, we should submit a claim, we should make it public in the newspapers, and then wait for proposals from the public. But many components in this law, they exist, but do they work, and what is the effect? And, for example, a local body say that people didn't address it, and this information it's very difficult to to verify this information, or the body just don't want to verify the information. And this is the second part of the corruption scheme. So there are many of them, actually. And so we neutralize this law by this. After the we overcome part of the, we break part of the corruption mechanism that exists nowadays. So, from the public, I would like to say that this draft law creates a procedure before the investor comes and did something, before the big project started, and it helps to discuss it with different bodies and to make this realization of this project easier. And so now the procedure is carried out when the projects are developed, and people don't want to reject these projects because the money were already put. So our draft law is directed that these procedures should be implemented before the project starts. And this will create the situation when it will be better for environment and for investment. And so it starts early, at the early stage, at the stage of design, and then they can't reject or just say, thank you for your active position. That will be impossible for bodies to do this. So, nature of Ukraine. I would like to thank you for your report, and we understand that the public now can participate in the process. And who will make these reports? Because we know there are some reports that are written at requests. So they say, for example, that who is responsible for these reports? Who can write them? Thank you for your question. According to the procedure of the design and project documentation, and projects should be prepared by professionals. And when this assessment was introduced in the middle of the 90s, there were some mechanisms how to ensure that the reports were of quality, and there should be a qualified there should be qualified specialists, and regulation of the procedure, and that would be done through some methodology established by environmental bodies, and they should develop some standards and some minimum quality criteria will be established as to compiling this report, and this documentation should be that the information was verified, and that this information be verified and clearly assessed. But the verify this quality, the most important thing is the participation of people, and it is the additional quality check of this document in the process of public discussions. Any more questions? Good day, Vasiliuk Alexei. And my question is, as I understood, the preparation of the law is done because there are many manipulations, and during public discussions. And for example, there are many discussions now about this law, but do you have some mechanisms, or for example, those decisions that were already made, and there are falsified public discussions decisions, And some, for example, one day, for example, Zhutev Island, for example, was made near the lake that was destroyed. So, do you have in this law some opportunity, some possibility to review the decisions that were made earlier, or some procedure will be established later? There are some issues, and this is not only the question of environment, it's about Ukrainian society. Until we have a legal system and fair judges, it won't be solved. Because these documents that were prepared, that work now, that are in they just copied the document, and the ministry provided the ecology expertise, and they made money of it. So if it's an industrial project and maybe they made it in at the state enterprise that was created by the Ministry of Ecology, and now people should be responsible before the law. And when we speak about the opportunities that some results of public discussions were falsified, and some industrial objects were built in residential areas, and people who gave out these sanitary expertise, they should be responsible also for this. And there are many officials that provide the documents, but they are subject to review. And this is the question not to ecologists, but to law enforcement officers. But we should say that public discussions were not conducted in many cases. They printed some information in the paper and waited just for a month just to get the documents that no one addressed, and no one did any proposals. So I think that now we have the opportunity to make things right. So they were printed in some newspapers and some announcement on the radio, and then no one knew what happened. So, and this draft law.
This draft law actually doesn't have reversible force, and for those project which has been constructed, procedures which were introduced, this draft law has nothing to do with that. As Ivan Petrovich mentioned, this is already within the competence of the law enforcement bodies, and not of this draft law. I'm sorry, I also would like to add that please pay attention to the following thing. We are going to introduce such institution as the final decision. Final decision, final rule in this document, either which allows this or another activity, or the document, if there is no permission or any permissible document regarding the procedure, and we are living through the regulation procedures, then the decision will have the role of the final decision. Also, I would like to draw attention to the following. The effective law will not have a retrospective force and will not cover the existing projects. But if we are going to introduce some changes into the activities or the facilities, either they are going to be completed in construction or change their purpose, they will have to go through this new procedure. And then the public will have possibility to respond in a proper way to those violations which have taken place before that. Okay, you answered my question, very short question. You were talking about the experts, they were often criticized, or they say, who actually signed this stupidity, but it must be, there is mention who is the author of that document, which you mentioned before. esteemed colleagues, once again, I would like to draw attention to the following. The law introduces this single register of documents of the this is going to be you can has an access to that in online mode. Of course, this is not going to contain only the conclusions. This will be a special decision. Yeah, this is going to contain everything, the notification and the OVD documents, whatever it means. As we are speaking about some kind of documentation, specific project facility, so we can actually monitor, and any kind of the public at large can follow up or can monitor who was the initiator of this and other document, including the all the documents, including the implementation project. Also, I would like to say that as a representative of executive power, I would like to say that the adoption of draft law in reduction of the procedures mentioned about the national level will contribute to improvement of the image of Ukraine international scene area now, because we have some cases when we fail to fulfill some of our commitments, and this kind of documents is one of the reasons of such cases. If we adopt this law and draft law this year, we will be able to improve or to take care of the those things. Also, Ukraine has, for a decade, we cannot resolve this issue. Actually, we are going to close that issue by adoption of this law. My name is Davidenko. In this case, I would like to ask those who mentioned the law, but there are no representatives on the European Investment Bank behalf here. My question is, it was very clearly understood from your presentation that in case of introduction of this legislation, a lot of responsibility will be on the shoulders of the executive power, which have to change absolutely all their approaches. Who is going to do that? Do you make provision for some training program to teach the people not only to be responsible for their signatures, but their procedure, which is provided for by this law, is absolutely unknown to Ukrainian citizens, starting from the small kids and all the way to the academicians of Academy of Sciences. It cannot just be implemented and start to work just like that by the snap of the fingers. But generally speaking, before I'm advanced, I would like to thank you and the European Investment Bank, which is entering this market now. Plans makes provision for such programs in order to increase the awareness of the local population, both on the national regional level. I would be very much interested in some way to cooperate with the executive powers who are responsible for the training of those experts who are going to make those assessments, evaluation, not only on the part of the public. There are people who can do that. Who is going to be responsible for the expert opinion, expert findings? Again, as a representative of executive power, I would like to say the adoption of this law on the environmental impact assessment actually is very much associated with the implementation of our association agreement. And implementation plans makes provision for the following. First, we have to adopt this draft law, then we have to take care of generation and adoption of a lot of regulatory and legislative acts to introduce those ideas in order to increase the awareness of the business and the public and this institution. So we're only happy that a group of the MPs has launched submitted the draft law to the Verkhovna Rada, and we only hope that we are not going to stop at that. And this will be instrumental, this adoption of the draft law to fulfill our commitments. As Deputy Minister mentioned, Ukraine also has to adopt a number of the bylaws which have to guarantee that this law is going to work, because just adoption that and make this draft law as a stillborn child, it's not our objective. We already had a talk with the European Commission members. Ukraine, for the adoption during the first reading, Ukraine has to do something in order to quickly take care of the drawing up of the bylaws, and immediately after this law is going to be effective, to submit those to the Cabinet of Ministers to make it possible to adopt timely. And if the public is going to use this instrument, the tool, and how much be aware of using that, very often the public at large does not make use of their, do not utilize their rights in influences the decision-making process. We have to work on that in order to increase the awareness and consciousness of the public. Last week we had a discussion that to launch in Ukraine a network of the sense which would be very active and ensure the activities of the public at large in the protection of the environment. Speaking about the expert component, this is the issue or your question you're talking about. Indeed, of course, we have to change the regulatory basis, especially by laws. We have to prepare it for the Cabinet of Ministers submission in their adoption. The second step should be the changes and the amendments of the national standards, because we have to adjust those for today's realities. Today we cannot any longer make use of, the 1960s or 70s. We have to adopt those in compliance with the real situation. Who is going, here we are talking about the personnel, who is going to take responsibility for preparation of the reports, etc. And we do not have a lot of the ecological institutions which deal with the skills upgrading of the ecologists who will be responsible for introducing the new examples of European model of learning and teaching. The Ecological Academy, which operates out of the Ministry of Ecology of Ukraine, is threatened by the possibility of being actually eliminated. You are talking about the increase in qualification or the skills of the ecologists. The Cabinet of Ministers have to think twice before actually eliminating this kind of expert component in our country. Thank you. Well, what you say is very good, especially what has been said by the Deputy Minister. But this is going to happen some time in the future. But we have to do something now. We have to introduce that document today. I mean, European Investment Bank actually plans to have some programs or curricula of teaching. I'm not talking about details. Let's start today, not wait until everything is going to be drafted or whatever. This is the proposal on the group from the European Investment Bank. Also, Ms. Galina is also present here, and she will be only happy to start this program in cooperation with this bank. I think our Center of Minister of Nature also would like to say a few words about skills upgrading, teaching, training the personnel. If this draft law, and we hope is going to be adopted, we start to work on that already. We are prepared to do that. Thank you. Okay, this brings us to the end of our previous briefing. Thanks to everybody. Thanks for coming. And so the next step is the first reading, and perhaps the start of the cooperation